All right, and to add more perspective in terms of what is likely to happen on day 2 of the informal summit, we are joined in by WION's Siddhant Sibal, who is joining us live from Mamallapuram. Now, good morning to you, Siddhant. We saw what took place in Mamallapuram yesterday, and today there are a number of engagements that have been planned as well. Give us a sense as to what is likely to play out today in Tamil Nadu.
Well, Mohammed, the Chinese president will be coming from Chennai to the town in just about 1 hour's time, and approximately at 9:50 the meeting will start. Today, the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese president will be spending approximately 3.5 hours together, and this is the scheduled time. Last night, we saw the dinner was scheduled for just 45 minutes and it lasted over 150 minutes, 2.5 hours of dinner diplomacy between world's most important leaders, the Chinese president and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So 3 hours of continuing the momentum which both the sides were able to make sure was there from yesterday's talks, and of course picking up the threads from where they left, whether it's the issue of terrorism or trade, the two T's which are the focus from India's side in this year's informal summit. Right. And there will be delegation level talks as well, and just before the delegation level talks, we know that the Indian Prime Minister and the Chinese President are expected to make statement that can tell what transpired between both the leaders.
Absolutely indeed, Siddhant. Do continue to stay on with us. Meanwhile, in the studio, we're also joined in by Ambassador Vishnu Prakash. Thank you very much indeed for making time for us here on WION. And let me begin by asking you this. This is the second informal summit between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping. Before we start off with the nitty-gritties of what has happened and what is likely to come of it, explain to us, what does an informal summit actually mean, and why is it different from the other kinds of engagement that are, exchanged diplomatically?
Well, it's interesting. A typical summit entails a face time of 2.5 hours, typically, between the two leaders. It means arrival, 20 minutes of tete-a-tete, 1 hour of delegation level talks, 1 hour of lunch, that's it.
Right.
That's a typical summit. Now look at this here, 5 hours of face time, of which 4.5 hours they had a one-on-one. So by one yardstick, it was maybe 5 summits rolled into one, because I have sat in a number of summits with the Chinese side, and they are very highly choreographed. You sit there, you read out your statements, there is very little interaction, and that's it. Now, the opportunity that the informal summits are giving the two leaders to have a freewheeling discussion, to share their respective positions. I mean, that's what Foreign Secretary mentioned yesterday. Right. And that I thought was quite pertinent to say the detailed discussions on respective national visions. That's very important. Also, the fact that you are in this kind of an informal atmosphere where there is no expectations, where you don't have to deliver, there's not a clock ticking, enables the sides to be more receptive, to be what will translate, what will come out of it is anybody's guess. But this kind of a forum, I think, is very appropriate in terms of an effort to build confidence and develop mutual understanding.
I think that is one of the key takeaways that's going to be building confidence. Now, the first informal summit took place in Wuhan. That happened with completely a different backdrop. India and China had come out of that eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation in Doklam, and
this time also there was something similar.
But this time round, do you not think, a slightly weaker China that we are engaging with? China is under pressure from the Americans because of the trade war. There is the issue of the protests that are continuing without subsiding in Hong Kong. So do you not think Beijing would like to have New Delhi firmly by its side as it sits and negotiates with the Americans?
Well, that's a very valid point, and lots of scholars and academics and experts have been talking about that, not just with the US, and it's not just a trade conflict. It is basically a tussle for global leadership. Right. China wants a China-centric regional and world order. So it's And then there is the BRI, pushback at BRI, there is the South China Sea, I mean there is slowing economy, there are a host of issues. But when it comes to India, I feel that they have shown that they will continue to take a hard line.
Right.
I mean, what they have done vis-a-vis India in calling Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan to Beijing on the eve of the visit was not accidental. Similarly, the hard line taken on Kashmir was not accidental.
All right. So that's very interesting, and also my colleague Siddhant Civil is still waiting by for us. Siddhant, you know, something that a lot of people are watching very closely is the issues that would have been raised. I'm told that my colleague Siddhant is no longer with us. But Ambassador, let me address that question to you. Now, Pakistan calls China its all-weather ally. But do you think the Chinese view the Pakistanis with the same perspective, or do you think Pakistan is important for China because of the BRI?
Well, there is no comparison. I mean, the two countries are like...
You know, the reason why I raise this is because Pakistan wants to internationalize the issue of Jammu and Kashmir by leveraging China. But do you think China would actually go to the extent that Pakistan is hoping that China would actually stand by with it?
Well, China uses Pakistan. Pakistan allows itself to be used. China uses Pakistan as a cat's paw. And China is using Pakistan to kind of keep complicating the environment for India, to box India in the South Asian framework. So that is the effort of China. There is a saying in Chinese and in Mandarin that, you know, on one mountain there cannot be two lions, and that is what they actually believe in. And you know, no prize for guessing. Mountain is Asia, and the lion is, one is China. I mean, the other. So that is the feeling. And they know that India has the potential, not now, but potential of being a countervailing force. And if I was President Xi Jinping or I was a Chinese leader, I would very much want to create complications for India. I mean, it's as simple as that.
And the other issue, you know, that's right, when you say that there is a certain element of rivalry between India and China, and also the fact that the two nations are on the cusp of... China is, of course, a much larger power. But it is this manufacturing powerhouse, and it is looking for markets to sell its products. And India is, of course, a huge market. $90 billion is said to be the amount of trade. Do you think, you know, Xi Jinping would want to jeopardize that with his policies? 90
billion is important, but not critical. Please, let's remember, China is a country with whose per GDP is 5 times India's GDP. Their foreign exchange reserves are $3.5 trillion.
Right.
They have a trade surplus with US, which is only about $360 billion. But very important for all of us to study the equation between China and Japan. China and Japan have a strong economic relationship. Japan gave huge amounts of ODA to China. But when it comes to the political aspect, it has always been frosty. China has the ability to kind of pursue its political interests with a singular focus. And trade is important but not critical in the Chinese scheme of things.
Absolutely. And, you know, as we look at the visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and also Xi Jinping walking around the many cultural heritage sites in Mamallapuram, you know, this is diplomacy with a personal touch. This is, you know, diplomacy not in the usual conventional sense. But this is also something that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had reiterated, that this is, you know, diplomacy that's unconventional. You know, it's hard to, in fact, predict as to, you know, when dealing with China, what all of this would yield. But where do you think, you know, since Wuhan, we have come to Mamallapuram, but what do you think is the key takeaway from Mamallapuram?
We will wait for the key takeaway. But I think the first time they met in Wuhan in an informal setup, it was, they were kind of testing waters, they were trying to kind of size up each other. Now, we can see from the body language that they are very relaxed. And Prime Minister Modi, to conduct him, to show him, to actually explain it to him, you know, the sites that he was explaining. And did you notice yesterday, you would have surely, that the two leaders were talking practically without interpreters.
Pretty much, yes. That was a bit of a surprise.
I would love to know what language they were speaking in, but, you know, it's amazing. So, and yesterday's dinner went 150 minutes beyond the scheduled time. in the Chinese scheme of things, that is very unusual. And I would think that there would be some positives. I mean, certainly on the softer issues, but on the trade side, there could be some development, which I am kind of keeping my fingers crossed, but thinking that there could be some.
Absolutely, indeed. Those will be some of the issues that we will look out for. Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, for joining us in our studios and giving us that perspective in terms of what may come out of this informal summit. We'll, of course, be watching the developments very closely. So the first day of the informal summit between India and China, of course, concluded with a lip-smacking dinner in Tamil Nadu's Mamallapuram. The President Xi Jinping was treated to an extremely lavish and an extremely delicious spread of cuisine, South Indian cuisine, by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who hosted the Chinese President during his visit at the quaint South Indian temple town. Now, a traditional South Indian spread was in fact a part of the menu for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the dishes included several South Indian delicacies, from the very usual tapkali rasam, which is a staple, to stuff like mamsam biryani. Now, the non-vegetarian menu included delicacies from South Indian states such as Tanjore Koli curry, that refers to a chicken curry from Tamil Nadu's Tanjore, and also Malabar lobster was also very prominently there on the menu as well. And besides this, there were other seafood as well that were a part of this menu that was served to the Chinese President. This included Karvapillai Meen Varuval. This, of course, refers to a curry of a certain cooked fish. But that wasn't all that was there in the menu. Desserts included the Indian delicacies of halwa and what was also referred to as Mukkani ice cream, which is a southern speciality which is made out of jackfruit, mango, besides a host of other ingredients that go into the making of this ice cream.